Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Let's Be Bold. I'm Demonica and I am your host. I am really excited about what I have for you guys today. We are going to be talking about my word of the year. Now, for the past couple of years, I have picked a word for myself to focus on and orient my intentionality towards. Last year for 2021, that word was presence. And throughout the year, I kept coming back to this word. And if I started to sense myself not focusing where I should be, or like wishing I was somewhere else, or, mentally planning a trip, I would come back to the present because that is where life is being lived. Now, this year, my word for 2022, it took me some time to land on, and I have finally settled on the word gentle. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I know that you guys are probably wondering, well, how did you come to land on the word gentle, Demonica? Good question. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and so I spend a lot of time talking to people and hearing their stories and learning more about what they have journeyed to. Now, this is something that I also do in my personal life and my relationships with my friends and my relationships with people at church. And so one of the things I hear in the therapy space is a lot of self-criticism and negative talk. Now, self-criticism is something that can show up in many different ways. And one of the ways that can show up is through depression. Now, I have seen a lot of clients who are dealing with depression and also people in my personal life. And one of the symptoms of depression is low self-esteem. And low self-esteem, if we're not feeling confident about ourselves, can indeed affect the way that we see ourselves and talk about ourselves. And then it also could shift the lens in which we view ourselves through others. And so if we are talking negative about ourselves, sometimes we make the assumption that other people are talking negative about us. So when I am with clients and they're telling me their story and they are expressing something that they want to change about themselves, they may start saying things like, wow, this is really wrong of me to do this, or I'm such a terrible person for going out drinking with my friends, or whatever it is. And I have to tell them, like, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to interrupt this because I am not going to tolerate any self-slander. My friends have also heard me say this. It is difficult to acknowledge the things that we have done that maybe we regret or don't like about ourselves. And the opposite of forgiving ourselves is not talking down about ourselves. And so gentleness is a word that I use to frame my lens when I'm in therapy with clients as far as how I want them to treat themselves, and it's the way that I'm going to treat them as well. For me personally, gentleness is something that I am wanting to grow more about as far as the way that I engage with myself. For example, the other week I was sitting on the counter working on a puzzle, beautiful puzzle, and I was on the phone with one of my best friends who lives down in Dallas, and I was telling her that I really needed to clean the bathroom and clean some other things around the house, and I was kind of in a negative headspace because I wasn't engaging in those things. I was sitting and doing a puzzle, and she said to me that that's okay. Like, doing a puzzle is something that is still like productive, quote unquote. And it is, for me personally, a way that I am able to spend time with myself and work through my thoughts, process through the day. And so she was just encouraging me and letting me know that it's okay that I was sitting and doing a puzzle. Now, this is something that I find myself doing a lot. If I'm in a chill space, whether that's I'm chilling on the couch watching TV, doing a puzzle, reading a book, or I decide to go out with my friends, sometimes I can't fully enjoy whatever it is that I'm doing. That kind of goes back to the presence word too, because I am stressing about the things that I am not doing, whether that's, man, I've got like 6 notes from the other day that I need to put in for my clients, or I have to clean the bathroom, or there's clean laundry that I should be folding. The list goes on, right? Now, for the past 2 years, socially, we've been really drained because we are all living and processing through a pandemic. On top of that, workflows have shifted, and we have spent more time in the work from home space than I imagine history has experienced before. And in addition to that, we have lost connections with friends, or at least we haven't been able to engage with them the same because our social lives have shifted so much. And there's this pressure, it seems like, to keep going with the life that we have been living and to push through until things return back to normal. And for me anyway, if that looks like being hard on myself because I am not engaging in work or in the day-to-day activities the same way that I used to be, right? Because I just don't have the same capacity than I used to. And so being gentle for me looks like I'm going to sit and do this puzzle, and then maybe later when my motivation swings up towards cleaning the bathroom, I will clean the bathroom. I did clean my bathroom like 20 minutes after I got off the phone with my friend. So I was not procrastinating super badly. I think that's the other thing that comes up too when we think about engaging in something that brings us joy, like doing a puzzle, instead of something that is productive, is we feel like guilty about those things, and we feel like maybe we don't deserve that time. So as I engage with people in my day-to-day life, I have started to encourage them to be gentle with themselves, of whether it's I overslept and I slept more than I should have, or I forgot to email this back to you and maybe like 5 days have passed. Practicing gentleness with myself is helping me be gentle with other people too, because I'm not going to be mad if you took longer than you thought that you would to email me something back, right? Because I know that everyone is going through their own shifts in the work environment, and I imagine there are things going on in people's personal lives that further affect the way that they can perform on a day-to-day basis. I also don't like that word performance, but moving on. So that is what that looks like for me, to practice gentleness and to engage in my relationships in a gentle way. So that is why I chose the word gentleness. Now, the other reason that I landed on this word is this semester I've been reading this book called Gentle and Lowly, and that is something that we are going to be walking through with my city group at church. And if you're wondering, this is what it looks like: Gentle and Lowly, the heart of Christ for sinners and sufferers. And reading through this book for me has been really powerful because the author talks about things like when we find ourselves engaging in sinful behavior or being hard on ourselves, or whatever that looks like, we actually call forth the grace and heart and compassion of Jesus. And I think that that's a really beautiful way to view our relationship with him. And so that is something that has also been impacting the way that I landed on this word gentleness. One of the things that I love asking my clients about, whether it's the first time I'm meeting them or we've been meeting together for several weeks, is what their hobbies are and what their creative spaces are. And I have people share with me different things, like they enjoy cooking, or they like to paint, or they like to write, or use like textiles art. I'm not an artist, so I don't know a ton about art. And it is amazing to see the way that they light up when they talk about engaging in something creative. And a lot of times on the back end of that, when I ask, okay, like how often are you engaging in these activities? And they will say things like, not as much as they want to. Or it's not something that they have time for, or, coming home from work and then doing more work takes priority. And the message that I want to communicate around creativity is these are ways that we are able to connect with ourselves, and we tend to put down those outlets after high school. I know that is something that happened for me as I went to college, and the amount that I had to study for sure went up, because I feel like I did not do a lot of studying when I was in high school, but that had to shift when I went to college. And the desire for social activity and volunteering, all of those things to build a productive college experience. So I no longer was spending time scrapbooking. I spent a lot of time scrapbooking, and I was still taking a lot of pictures, but not savoring them in the same way that I used to. And I grew up dancing, and I didn't dance as much. I wasn't reading as much because I was overloaded with textbooks and books that I needed to read for class. And now that I have finished college and completed my master's degree and am working in the field, I find that even though, we have 2 days for the weekend, in preparation for Monday, I find that I'm still tired. And I've been learning about the different kinds of rest aside from sleep. I think a lot of times when we think about rest, we think of sleep. And so thinking about how we can be gentle with ourselves, if we find that you want to go out hammocking and read a book, which is one of my favorite things to do, not right now because it's been freezing here in Colorado, I allow myself that space, and I will maybe set boundaries around that space of like, okay, you can do this for 2 hours or however long, because there are other things that I have to do, like catch up on client notes, but I am not going to make myself feel guilty for taking time to engage in those creative spaces. Even creating space to build this podcast, which is something that I have wanted to do for several years, and work was a priority over that, and the areas that I volunteered in church was a priority over that. And I lost sight of kind of what my individual goals were in pursuit of career goals, and I have been in a very burnt out place as a therapist. And so I was like, you know what, I am going to have to create space for this. And so I did, and now I have this weekly podcast. So if you are someone who's like, man, I used to be super into hip hop, or I used to go to fashion shows, or I used to paint, even though I'm not studying to be an artist and it has nothing to do with my career, I want you guys to be comfortable enough to say, hey, I am going to carve time out for my creative expression. And it is amazing to hear people, even like if I give them a homework assignment of like, okay, like, yes, I want you to journal your thoughts when you're having a hard time going to bed, if you're feeling really anxious. And I want you to maybe draw out what you think those feelings look like. It is amazing to see people light up as they engage with themselves. And I think that these creative outlets are ways that we realign with ourselves and fill ourselves up, especially during a time when being filled by other people is less at an option, because I think that it seems that we're all on empty. I want that for you. And even if it's something like, oh, I really want to advance in rock climbing and bouldering, I want you guys to be able to do that and not tear yourself down for spending a little extra time in the gym than maybe you normally would. So for my challenge at the end of this week's episodes, I want you guys to maybe write down 2 or 3 self affirmations just to move away from this negative talk that we've been talking about. So, for example, if the self affirmation is, I am a really good worker and I also love myself well and I deserve the attention that I give everybody else, that can be a start. Even if it's something, it can be something as small as, I am going to have a good day today. When you wake up in the morning, I want you guys to practice those affirmations. And it would be great if you started replacing whatever negative self-talk that you might be experiencing with those positive affirmations. That is not something that's going to happen overnight. I know in my practices, I have worked on writing self-affirmations for myself in the morning and then also affirmations for myself at the end of the day after I am like, okay, like we did it. Time to get ready for a new day. Whatever that looks like for you, I hope that that is something that you find helpful and enjoyable. And I will talk to you guys next week.